Meatball George.
Hello, brother John. How are you?
Oh, tough loss today, George. Meatball.
Yeah, it was a tough loss, but you know, them's the breaks once in a while. Von Miller came out and said it already. You need a loss like this once in a while to get things going.
Yeah. Listen, I don't think either of us were predicting 17-0.
Mm-mm.
It's tough. Now Miami's leading the division.
Yeah,
And this is a guy, Tua is a guy that before last week, if he didn't play well, and he wasn't playing well in that Baltimore game, there was going to be talk of benching him.
right.
But now they're winning the division, and there's no talk of benching him. I mean, the whole reason they went out and got Bridgewater to begin with was to either compete with him or to have someone if they had to bench him.
You know, John, you started already saying tough loss, but we didn't say what it was. The Bills lost today on the road to Miami Dolphins, 21-19.
That's true.
And I actually saw a headline already, although it was with a question mark. Are the Dolphins the best team in the AFC? Now, I don't believe that for the life of me.
Well, if they could play every game at home in that heat, maybe they'd have maybe.
Yeah. You know,
Very well.
I gotta say the team that the Dolphins put it on the field and the team the Bills put on the field, the Dolphins earned that victory. They almost gave it away, but it was nice to see Josh Allen return to his old form of 2018 and mess up and then mess up again. You know, the Bills could have won that game, could have, would have, should have. They got Miami punted out of their end zone. He punted right into his own player's butt side.
Yeah.
The ball flew out of bounds. The Bills get a safety. Now they're only 2 points down. They get the punt. Miami punts, great punt. But Josh Allen methodically starts moving that ball down the field. We get across the 50-yard line, somewhere near the 45-yard line. And what happens? We have a big penalty.
Oh, you're talking about the personal foul on Allen.
The personal foul, no, not on Allen. I can't remember who it was on, but it was that moves them back 10 yards. It was, and now the Bills have to go back to the drawing board, and they pass enough yards to be able to make that long punt, or not, sorry, long field goal, but instead they ran out of time as Josh Allen tries to spike the ball. The clock clicks down to 0, and the Bills never get a chance to kick a field goal, or at least attempt to kick a field goal.
Yeah.
So we saw mistakes by Josh Allen. They had a wide open touchdown there in the fourth quarter, and he threw the ball short, 5 yards short of bounce. Was it McKenzie's hands or something?
They did give him an X-ray after and McDermott was asked about it, and he said, "No, he's going to be okay."
Yeah.
So if he hit his hand on the helmet, I don't know what happened there.
I don't know what happened either.
Allen didn't say. It was just a football thing. He said, "Bad pass."
Bad.
He also wouldn't explain what got him so upset that he did commit the personal foul.
No, he was laying on top of the Miami Dolphin.
Yeah.
And, he knocked that Dolphins player helmet off. He drew a flag. Unnecessary roughness by the quarterback. That's a pretty rare call. But who knows what the Dolphin guy was doing to him? You know what? He was laying on the ground. But we don't know. We don't know. But it kind of
a squirrel grip.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of the 13-second game, I'll be honest with you. You know, the Bills had a chance and they mismanaged the clock, and they made stupid penalties.
Bad penalties didn't help.
Had Bass missed a field goal, they would have been ended up ahead by a point instead of behind by 2 points.
If he doesn't miss that field goal, even if they're behind, they were behind, at the end of the game, they were behind by 4.
Yeah, but I'm thinking if they kick the field goal, they're only down by 1, and then Josh only has to, he'll get the clock back, and all he's got to do is maneuver him into a field goal position.
The potential.
And the safety created that scenario for them, and they just mismanaged it, John. They threw over the middle. They wasted the time out. You know,
they had about 1:34 left when they got that ball, and I know it was a really good punt, but there was plenty of time.
Yeah,
they didn't. If they had a tiny timeouts, they only had 1, and that's fine. That should have been manageable. Look, the pressure they put Allen under, it worked.
You know, why are you throwing over the middle with 9 seconds left to try and get in, and we have no timeouts, trying to get into field goal range? There's no way you're gonna. I mean, it's just one questionable play after another. And so that part reminded me of the 13 seconds. It's like when they get into these scenarios where they just are under pressure, they seem to make mistakes, John, as a team.
No, that's not true, because we've seen them go downfield and score late with tons of pressure. It's not just a playoff game. We see them go down the field and score. Well, okay. They went down the field and scored against Arizona, and then they let in the Hail Mary. So that actually reaffirms your point. But we've seen them go down the field and score late in games. In fact, that's one of Allen's things. He's cool under pressure.
But he actually came out tonight already and apologized to Bills Mafia.
Yeah, I believe he felt pretty bad. Like that McKenzie was wide open.
And he was wide open.
He puts the ball in the ground, and I don't know if there was something wrong with his hand or not, but he's not using that as an excuse. I give a good deal of credit. Like, look, at halftime, just before the half started on the radio, I forgot the play-by-play guy. He was going through some stats, and what he said was the Dolphins blitzed 10 times in the first half. 9 times Allen completed a pass for 211 yards and a touchdown.
Right. Okay.
But like whether it was, but he was under pressure, and that in the second half, I don't think he was as effective against pressure. I also think in the second half, like, they realized that Diggs was the only threat out there. And they found a way. They found a way to cover him. It wasn't an issue of, well, if we cover Diggs, something else is going to be good. They're going to get something. They covered Diggs, and Gabe Davis wasn't there for them. McKenzie wasn't there for them. Crowder wasn't there for them. The guys weren't getting open.
I really felt that the Dolphins. I felt the Dolphins wouldn't be able to keep up with the Bills. And in reality, they scored 3 times, the Dolphins, not a lot. So it was a wide open game for the Bills to take. But all the turnover on the line in injuries and heat exhaustion and all that kind of stuff, and the way Miami was mugging those wide receivers in the second half, a number of times I thought there should be interference penalties called against the Dolphins, but they never were. But that's, you can't blame that. But I did see that a number of times.
And I got to be honest, I saw some of that too, but I got to be honest. If they were calling it, they'd probably call it both ways.
Yeah, that's true.
And I don't know how much
They called one on the Buffalo guy. And I
Christian.
think that was, I don't think he was barely touching the Dolphins receiver.
Yeah, that was a little ticky tack.
Yeah, that was ticky tacky. But on the Bills offensive line, Spencer Brown went out. Quisenberry had to come in. Manch had to come in. They pulled him up off the
Van Rotten went out.
squad,
Yep.
and Rotten came out. They had to move
Bates came out.
Bates over, and then Bates came out. I mean,
Doyle had to come in.
yeah, the offensive line just fell apart for yeah,
One
the
more
offensive
guy.
line fell apart. Mhm,
Guy, they got to use a tight end.
mhm.
They put in 3 substitutes. That means they had 8. They dressed 8. I don't know if they dressed 9.
Mhm.
That might have been the freaking Knox might have been trying to play guard.
Yeah,
That wouldn't have been good.
yeah. I just think this is one that they gotta chalk up under their belt as like, we lost it for whatever. This is one of those, if I was a coach, I think I'd say, listen, nobody's pointing fingers here. Everything went wrong. Anything we could possibly think of going wrong went wrong. Let's get back to let's wipe this game off our minds. Let's get back home. Let's get ready for the Baltimore game.
Okay, well, I'm not ready for that yet.
Okay.
At the end of the half,
Mhm.
they're trying to get in position to get a shot at field goal.
Right. They blew that too.
They blew that too. Well, he's supposed to clock the ball, and he ends up throwing a pass to Diggs.
But that's when the guy hiked him the ball, but he didn't get control of the ball, and the ball fell in the ground. He picked it up and he threw the ball.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now here's the thing. After the game was over, I don't know. Did the announcer say during the game, because I wasn't able to hear it, did the announcer say during the game that if you're going to clock the ball, you have to just grab it and clock it? Like once there was a muffle, he could no longer do that. It would have been a penalty.
Mhm.
I don't know. Did they say that? Do you recall?
No, I don't.
After the game, the guys on the radio were saying, look, hold on, that you can't, once there was a muffled transfer there from the center, you can't just spike it anymore. It would probably have resulted in a delay game penalty or grounding.
Mhm.
I don't know that that's true. But one thing I can tell you, if he was thinking fast enough to be like, oh, I can't spike it now.
Throw it out of bounds.
Well, if you throw it out of bounds, clock time is running out. If you throw it out of bounds, you really are at the mercy of when do they stop the clock.
Mhm.
You got to throw it, and you can't throw it. You can't have a completion there.
Well, you got to have an incomplete pass.
You can't have a completion. Even if Diggs somehow avoided the cornerback in front of him, he's got 40 yards to run, or
Mhm.
45.
Right.
I love him, but he's not such a speedster that he's going to take that to the house anyway.
Right.
Someone's going to catch him. It's got to be to the ground in front of him. Then you've got some chance that upon review, they could say the ball hit the ground here. There's how much time was left. There's only 3 seconds or so, so the clock might have run out anyway. But you can't complete it for sure. And the best thing to do is to put it at his feet. It's not grounding because there's a receiver in the area, even if it's behind the line of scrimmage. It's not grounding. So give him all the credit in the world for thinking fast and understanding that he couldn't spike the ball there. But you got to know that you don't have time for a completion either. And you have to just put that ball into the ground, but near the receiver. And hope that there's some seconds left. Even 1 second would let them get their guys out onto the field before the ball is snapped, right? So that didn't go well. The center exchange, again, you have a backup center in there. So that didn't go well. But
backup center.
Well, I don't remember if in the first half, Mens came in the first half.
No, I don't think so. I think it
So
was,
Van Rotten was probably still out there.
yeah.
And there was not, that was not the first issue with their stamps.
Mhm.
And that's going to happen when you win the backup of the game. So, all right.
And the Bills on the defensive side, the Bills got a couple of sacks, but in general, they didn't get any pressure on Tua. The middle of that line was not collapsing the pocket onto Tua, and generally had plenty of time to throw the ball.
Yeah,
And so many times those wide receivers were wide open.
well,
Wide open.
I think that was some of the, like, that can happen when you play a lot of zone because
Mhm.
it's unpredictable.
Yeah.
And you got rookies out there doing the best they can. I will say that is the you don't want, there's no excuses. But no Phillips, no Oliver, the defensive tackle is not playing. That I think that did hurt their ability to put pressure.
Yes, I agree. More than I was hoping it would be, but it did. And it really did. Rousseau was effective. Von Miller had a little bit of effect a couple of times, but in general, he wasn't a factor.
He was, when at the end of the game, before Miami punted into his own, before they messed up their punt, he had that great pressure in the end zone, which caused him to throw an incompletion. That was a big part of why they weren't able to move the ball, get a first down, even get the ball off the one, right? He was a big part of that. The defensive tackles did well there. I saw a couple of times Miami would try to run up the middle. I think they thought that they might, with two backup defensive tackles in the game, I think they thought there would be some space there. And really, they clogged up the middle pretty good.
Yeah.
Miami didn't get a bunch of running yards.
You knew that the defense was in big trouble on Miami's last touchdown when it was 3rd and 22. The Bills rushed 3 guys. So they got 8 floating out there, and Tua throws the ball, and there was absolutely nobody around that receiver. And he caught it 45 yards down the field.
There was nobody around a receiver, and there was nobody around Tua.
That's right.
He might have been.
It was a pitch and catch. How do you have 8 guys out there and nobody is anywhere near the receiver?
Yeah,
not even in the picture frame.
Look, I know I was one person who criticized them at the end of the Kansas City game, playoff game. They still rushed 4. They didn't get any pressure, and they didn't have enough guys in the backfield to tackle Hill.
So this was a 13-second. This was the fix. Let's only rush 3.
They only rushed 3. I guess they got to go down to 2. They got to rush 2. Put another guy back there to stop this.
And then Tua would have just ran with like 5 guys in front of him. It's just another case where the Bills lose a close game.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, I think this one was really because we were in that position because of all the injuries the Bills had. I really do. Between the injuries that they went into the game with and the guys that were sucking wind on the field, they weren't in condition for this. They weren't ready to play that game, John.
Okay, well, now here I got 2 more things for you.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't in condition for this.
Mm-mm.
Look, that's on them.
John, the Bills had over 40 minutes time of possession.
Yeah.
And the offensive line was sucking wind. The defense on the Dolphins was out there the same 40 minutes, and they looked as fresh as daisies going out against the Bills offense.
So that falls on the players.
I say they weren't ready for it.
Guys don't show up to spring training, we're not spring training, to preseason, and then try to work themselves into shape.
Mhm.
That was 40 years ago, 50 years ago. Guys show up ready to go. And there's no to it. There's no hitting. You can't put the pads on twice a day. There's a lot of limitations. That's all collectively bargained. Players have a responsibility to be ready. That's on them. Both before the season starts, being ready for the season, but also from one game to the next. I don't think that the Bills trading department doesn't do things that other teams do. You know, the Dolphins training department didn't do a better job of getting their guys ready. It's up for the players.
A couple of years ago, the Bills played Tennessee, and it was like 4th and a half a yard or 4th and a foot, and Josh Allen slips. They fall apart. They lose the game by a couple points, 3 points, and we should have won that game. The 13-second game, they scored their touchdown. They can't figure out how to manage the clock and how to kick off properly, how to do it in 13 seconds. They blew that game. Now they come out against the Dolphins. They had everything fall in their lap so that they could still win that game. And Josh Allen throws the ball into the ground one time. They bobbles the ball and he can't down it another time.
So
they can't operate under pressure. I think that organization has a problem in operating under short time pressures in close games, and they can't figure out how to get out of their own way.
All right. So is McDermott the right guy?
Well,
that sounds like a systemic issue.
I think it is a systemic issue. No, I'm not going to say he should be out, but I think it's time. And maybe they do, John. I think it's time they got to sit down, the coaches together, and have their own meeting. A lot of times you hear about a players meeting. It's time for a coaches meeting to sit down and say, listen, guys, what the hell are we doing here? We got to be prepared for these things, and we're not. And it all flows from the top guy, and that would be, it would be.
Now, I will say, you remember some of the players in the NFL. In fact, some of the professional players really had a challenge with accepting the COVID shot.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of these guys, they work so hard on sculpting their bodies, and they become so meticulous into what they eat that whether it's taking blood out or putting something in, they could be really hesitant to let that affect their bodies. And I don't really think that way, but I also don't spend that amount of time. I don't spend any time sculpting my physique, right? I don't know if players were declining an opportunity for an IV. You know, Spencer Brown, they said straight up, it was heat.
Mm-hmm.
He came out of the game because of issues with the heat. Kevin
Stinks came out, and they were referring to, they thought it was cramping. I don't know if it was or not.
Well, the way at one point he was limping.
Yeah.
So it looked like cramping. And that is also indicative of dehydration.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Bates went out, the big guard. I assumed it was also due to heat, but it turns out he hurt his back. So that's what McDermott said afterwards. He hurt I think it was his back. So he came out with a stinger or something. But and that he'll have more information Monday as to the severity of the injury.
I heard one commentator kind of insinuated that, you know, Bobby Hart was out because of what he did last week. He threw a punch and that, you know, got him suspended. Like it was his fault that they lost, you know.
Oh, well, you know what? So
all these things add up, but I don't think it was his fault.
I don't know if he would have gone in instead of Tommy Doyle. He wouldn't have replaced Quisenberry. I think Quisenberry did really well in the preseason. I don't think he's a center, so I don't think he would have gone in there and taken snaps. But if he would have gone in for Bates instead of Tommy, I don't know. No. I will say that the Bills lost the line of scrimmage.
Yes, they did.
The offensive line of scrimmage, they lost it. Whether it was blitzing or non-blitzing, sometimes Spencer Brown got beat a couple times. I mean, just beat. You know, that will happen, but it was happening enough that they didn't get that kind of offensive flow. All right. Anything else you want to throw out? Oh, I do just want to say, look, Miami played pretty well.
Yes, they deserved the win. They played well. They did, and they played well in the defensive backfield. They played well on both lines of scrimmage, and Tua made the plays when he had to.
Yeah. Look, the Bills' defense kept them in it.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't on the field as long. Part of the reason they weren't on the field as long is because they kept getting off the field. Right? They would stop. They would make a stop and get off the field. The offense wasn't able to punch the ball in the end zone on numerous drives.
Mm-hmm.
And we're kind of used to them scoring touchdowns.
Yeah.
You know, not settling for field. And they, I think, have gotten to a point where they're going for it in the red zone. They're going for it on fourth down. They expect to make it and then score a touchdown. So, you know, hats off to Miami, what they were able to accomplish. I'm mostly concerned. Like Monday or Tuesday, we'll find out the severity of these injuries. That list is going to be off the page. You know,
look, when you look at the Bills' position, Kansas City lost. The Bills already beat Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
The Colts have lost a couple of games. The only one sitting on top right now is Miami. They are dictating their own destiny. And I didn't see a team out there today of Miami Dolphins that I think is going to go undefeated this year, or that is the best team in the NFL or the AFC. I didn't.
I think the Heat helped them. Yeah, I think the Heat helped them.
And I think the Bills just need to concentrate. You got Baltimore coming up. The Dolphins already beat Baltimore, so you're going to have to get your act together, go home, lick your wounds, and beat the Ravens.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to keep pace with Miami that way until Miami finally stumbles. So they're going to have to go home, lick their wounds, not worry about that Miami beat them this one time in the heat with all the injuries. You got to go home and get better, get well, and get ready for the Ravens game.
Yeah, I'm taking a quick peek. Look. And then the Chargers, Buffalo. It's a weird schedule. Like the Buffalo schedule, we have the hardest part of our schedule, the first 5-6 games.
Mm-hmm.
And then it looks to ease up a bit. Miami has kind of more of a hit and miss. Like Buffalo is one of the hard games. They got that twice. They played Baltimore. It's going to ease up, then it gets hard again. There's kind of hit and miss. So over the course of the season, we'll really find out, just how good they are. That they're certainly a lot of confidence right now, and they're playing with a great deal of enthusiasm.
Yeah.
So good for them. Our cousin Jimmy, he calls them the gay fish. No, the gay sharks. The gay sharks.
That's what he calls the Dolphins.
The Dolphins, the gay sharks. I thought that was funny. I never heard that before, but that was
me neither.
I heard Squish the Fish, but I never heard
Squish the Fish. Well, look, we just have to get well. I don't know. We're gonna have to. Now we got so many people on this team with dinged up. We just don't know who's going to be on that field next week, John.
Look, I will throw one thing at you that I had been eager for them to improve the offensive line and not keep trying to use rejects from other teams.
Mhm.
And they don't want to do it. They don't want to do it. But what I will say, at least they don't want to do it the way I wanted to do it. But what I will throw at you is, I also thought going into the season that there's a hole in that wide receiver room.
Yeah.
Today,
And apparently Shakir isn't the answer because they didn't even dress him.
when we finally went up against a team that was willing to do what it takes to try to slow down Stephon Diggs, he didn't really have anybody else step up for him.
No.
There were a
He
lot of times he had no one to throw to.
He threw a lot to the backs, but the Dolphins were ready for it.
Yeah, McKenzie got a little play. McKenzie caught a couple passes, and of course he was open for that touchdown that he wasn't able to get the ball to him.
Crowder got mugged.
Crowder was non-existent.
He was mugged. Gabe Davis, they mugged him all day.
I thought Gabe Davis looked like a guy who was rusty. Maybe he's not fully healthy.
Yeah.
He looked like a guy who was rusty.
Yeah.
And you're right. Listen, they play that kind of defense, like their corners are on you.
Mm-hmm.
But with Stephon Diggs, they gave him some help.
Yeah.
And the Bills couldn't make him pay for doing that. Not consistently. And not in the red zone.
And they were able to get to Josh Allen enough times. I thought he would run crazy in the fourth quarter, and he ran a little bit, but they weren't letting him get outside the pocket. They weren't letting him take advantage of any running lanes. They really shut that down. You got to give Miami credit. They played well. They deserve that win.
I will throw one other thing out there. Look, I think I'm getting to the point where I'm willing to say that the reason Dawson Knox is not part of this offense, it's scheme.
Yeah, it's the scheme. Yeah.
Yeah. So it really doesn't matter who their tight end is, because they're not trying to utilize them like.
Yeah, look, they seem to want a blocking tight end, and that's why I'm surprised they let OJ Howard go. That's what they had.
And I'm surprised that okay. So did the front office know that when they re-signed him, gave him an extension? Because now for a blocking tight end, he's way overpaid, or at least he's
and they paid OJ Howard all his money and then let him go.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if everybody was on the same page there.
Mm-hmm.
This was a game where Knox could have made a difference as far as red zone, and even the occasional pass as they're moving the ball down the field. Mm-hmm. But you're right. They did seem to want to utilize the backs, and that's fine. But I'm beginning to come to the conclusion that the scheme is what's keeping Knox from being a bigger part of the passing attack.
Yeah, the first 2 weeks it worked okay because Diggs made 112 catches in the first couple of games and a number of touchdowns. But
so they went up against one of the best cornerbacks in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't shut him down, mm-hmm. but they slowed him down enough where he wasn't going to be the guy that could beat him.
Right.
And they didn't lose.
Right.
Listen, we're going to get to play again.
Yeah.
Like you said, maybe we'll be healthier, and it won't be in that kind of heat.
No, I think at this time you got to just go home, see who you think can go on your field. You still got Josh Allen, and you're going to have to scheme for the Ravens, which means you're going to have to try and get your defense healthy. They're going to have to shut down that running game, and see if we can get a guy back see if we can get Poyer back on the field,
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you were without both safeties. You were without both starting.
Do they have to go get a veteran cornerback?
Well, yeah, but where are you going to get one that's practiced up and still doing a good job. You gonna go get Richard Sherman somewhere, maybe, or what are you gonna get?
Isn't he the commentator now? Yeah, I hear you.
I don't know. What are you gonna get?
They didn't do it all preseason. They decided to go with the youth movement here.
Yeah.
And
You can't complain after the first two games. We're talking about, yeah, they did a good job. Well, I just honestly, John, I just think there were too many problems on the Bills team today. And they still almost won the game.
they did have some challenges today, and it was close. Yeah, they had a shot, although the punter kicking into that's on Miami, right? Like the part the Bills played in that was that they didn't let them get a yard.
I think that was probably better for Miami that they got that safety, because if he would have punted it, it would have just barely got over that guy's butt, which would have been a high punt, not very long. Maybe we would have been able to return it. Maybe we would have been in a punt. Maybe we would have been in field goal range already. So,
Well, yeah, but it wouldn't have done you any good because you were down by
not
4.
field goal. Yeah, we would have to get a touchdown.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. What they had to do was not punting into the guy's butt. If they, then. But
Miami did everything they could do. Yeah, Miami did all they could do to lose it at the end as well. But Buffalo said, "Oh no, let us."
We're determined. All right,
We're determined.
George, have a good night.
All right, we'll talk later. We got next week's game, and we'll be ready.
All right. Hope you enjoyed this conversation. Hope you enjoyed.
Congratulations to the Dolphins. Yep, and thank you all for watching.
All right, bye.